listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Straight to Video podcast. I've had a lot of fun over the past week or so and been speaking to a bunch of great guests who've given me some brilliant stories to share with you all, and these will be released over the next couple of weeks, so you're in for a real treat. We're kicking things off today though with a wonderful chat with Tory Stoffregen. Tory has been playing guitar for the band Enuff Z'Nuff for over 10 years now, but he's also got a great resume of other bands which all form part of his story, and it's a super interesting one. This whole chat turned into a real journey, and I learnt a bunch of stuff about Tory I didn't know, so I want to say thank you to him for being so open and really just a whole lot of fun. Tory tells us all about his journey from Iowa to the West Coast and Hollywood, California as a young guitarist. He gives us a great insight into that whole scene during that time and how he found things in his first few bands and just the way he navigated the music industry. We learn of the huge and, really huge life-changing event he went through around 5 years ago and his whole outlook on music and life in general. We really do start at one point and end at another, which seems like a million miles away from each other. I think you'll really enjoy it and hopefully check out some of Tory's great music, either his current work with Enuff Z'Nuff, his new reissue of his old band Motherload, or his brilliant projects with the Black Mollies and the New Black 7. Tory is all over social media, and you can visit thenewblack7.com, that's with a number 7, where you can pick up some great modern country rock music. Alternatively, and what is really cool, is that Tory has released the entire Black Mollies catalogue online for people to download, either for free or just by making a small donation. If you search for the Black Mollies SoundCloud on Google, it'll take you right there. And if you like great power pop like Lit, Everclear and The Marvelous 3, then there's almost 30 songs to dive into. So sit back, grab a beer or a nice strong cup of coffee and enjoy my chat with the wonderful Tory Stoffregen.
Hello.
Hey, there we go. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. You staying busy or has it been weird?
Yeah, man. It sucks not playing, but I had so many ideas and stuff that I wanted to record that I'm using the time. I'm using every minute of the time.
Yeah, getting it all down.
I had probably 1,000 ideas, little snippets on my phone that I kept saying. I remember when I was in Australia, that was our last gig. And I was like, man, if only I had the time, I would record like 10 records right now. And then, like 1 week later, it's like, well, here you go. Here's all the time you need.
Yeah. So I'm going to dig back into your past a little bit, if I may.
All right.
Can you take us back to your childhood in Iowa?
Iowa. Yep. That's where I grew up.
What are some of your fondest memories? Knowing you for a lot of years, it's pretty evident that a part of you is forever there.
Yeah, except now living by the ocean, I don't know how I ever lived like in the Midwest, because I love being able to go to the ocean every morning and have coffee. It's amazing. When I got here, I was just like, man, how did I live in the Midwest with no ocean for so long? And when I graduated, like the day after graduation from high school, I moved to LA. So it was like a complete shock for this small town kid that grew up way out in the country. Like my closest neighbor was, far away from me. We were in the middle of nowhere growing up. That's the reason I started playing guitar. And it's the reason that I got to practice so much, because all the kids in town were riding mopeds kids and having fun. We were out on the farm, nothing to do but go shoot guns and play guitar.
Yeah. Are you from like a farming family then?
We didn't actually have a farm. It was just an acreage, but we had a couple horses and all that stuff. My dad had a big garden where he would grow stuff, but not farming.
What else was there to do before you found guitar? Or did you get into guitar super, super early?
No, I got a guitar for Christmas on my 12th year on the planet. I got a Kiss record on my 11th year on the planet.
Which one?
Kiss Alive 2. The gatefold sold me. I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Just on how it looked, you judged the next so many years on.
And I started playing drums on like ice cream tubs. And then I was like, nah, Ace Frehley looks cooler. So I was like, got a Les Paul copy for Christmas. And that's it. I knew I was going to be broke the rest of my life.
From where you lived, was country music a pretty big thing?
Oh, yeah. Iowa.
Yeah.
That was really my first exposure to music, was my mom and dad's record collection. George Jones and Johnny Cash, Merle Haggard, stuff like that. My cousins had a band that they would play at like little bars, like taverns, and we would go see them. I remember I had my little realistic tape recorder, and I would take it with this little microphone and like sit in this tavern, and they're playing, like country songs. I would go home and listen to them, just like, man, I wish I could play in a band. That's so cool.
Do you think that was probably your first thing then, where you saw people on a stage and thought, holy shit, that looks great?
Yeah, I think it was my cousin's band. They all played together. And I think that was probably my first live music, was those guys.
So was you allowed to go into those places at such a young age? I know, because of your drinking age. And
with
stuff.
Your parents, yeah. Probably when I was like 12. And a lot of them would have and they still do, I think, like a banquet room next to the tavern. Probably, I was trying to think of that Two Horseshoes or whatever where we played. Kind of a different room.
Three horseshoes, three horses hose.
Yeah. I think seems like the UK kind of has that, where there's like the bar and then there's like a room next to it. They have that a lot.
The function room.
Yeah.
Hire it out for a wedding or somebody's 50th birthday party or something like that.
Yeah.
So was it Kiss that took you out of the realm of hearing like classic stuff like maybe the Beatles and country music and made you think, holy shit, what is this? Yeah. Was it Kiss or was it somebody else?
No, it's definitely Kiss. They were the band. And when I was growing up, I was across the hall from my brother, and he had this huge stereo system. But I mean, Kiss was definitely that band. But I remember distinctly hearing the sirens on Van Halen 1, just loud, like shaking the house on Running with the Devil. And I was just like, whoa, what is that? And then so like Kiss got me going, and then definitely as guitar players, Eddie Van Halen blew me away. I was just like, whoa, what is this? And then I was telling somebody the other day about first learning to play guitar and running upstairs and telling my mom and dad, this is like, I didn't even know that You Really Got Me was a cover. And I was like, I learned to play this incredible song by the best guitar player in the world. And I was so proud to learn You Really Got Me, and probably terribly, like sliding the G and the A, but da, 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 da. I was like, man, I'm getting good. I can play You Really Got Me.
So were all your friends into the same stuff? How was you hearing about new bands and things like that?
To get to school, we had to get on a school bus. And then so like some of the people that lived out in the country, there was an older guy in the neighborhood down the country road. And I would go over there and he would like turn me on to this like older like rock, I was basically like instantly into classic rock. After that, it would have been, we didn't have cable TV out in the country back then. You couldn't get cable. So my friends in town, when they got MTV, I would like go stay at their house for the weekend. And I remember distinctly seeing the Round and Round video.
Awesome.
And I had been like way into punk rock, like the Dead Kennedys and the Dead Milkmen and like stuff like Black Flag, stuff like that, just like hardcore punk.
Where was you hearing that though? Because I mean, surely that wasn't on TV that much.
No, never. But there was like in Cedar Falls, Iowa, there's a college called University of Northern Iowa. And there was a lot of like a big punk rock scene there. And for some reason, this little town, I lived in a small town away from there, but all my friends lived in that, like the big city, Cedar Falls. And so when I would go in there, they were light years ahead of us country kids. That town, for some reason, got a lot of punk rock shows. There was like this underground scene there, when they would print up magazines in their basements and stuff. And they had this like cool punk rock scene that I was way into until I saw Round and Round. And I was like, man, Warren DeMartini looks so cool.
So you're over at your friend's house for the weekend and they all want to hang out and you're like, shit, I'm just binging MTV all weekend.
Yep. And then I remember getting out of the cellar and I was like, man, I really got to learn to play guitar really good now. You know, you're playing Kiss songs and stuff all of a sudden, and the cool, great classic Ace Frehley licks. But then you hear something like, you know, Van Halen and Round and stuff like that. You're like, that's a whole new thing.
Yeah. Do you think it was like you've been listening, you'd heard lots of country music and stuff. Was the hard rock stuff, was that like larger than life and like a million miles away from it? Do you think that's one of the things that attracted you to it?
Yeah, I think so. And that's probably what took me back to country music later on in life, is getting away from that.
Other than country, did much like rock stuff coming through the town?
Jeez. I mean, I lived in such a small town.
Yeah.
Like nobody would come through that town.
How far did you have to travel?
God. Well, the town that was like 15 miles away was like that college town. And that's where I started going to concerts when I was, God, what was that? 1983. It was my first concert. And that was Mr. Roboto, Styx.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. Like within a month, I saw Styx and the Police on the Synchronicity tour, and that they were both great. At once, Styx, they came out and did the Mr. Roboto thing, and it was like, I don't know about this. And then they came back. They like came back in like, you know, street clothes and just rocked out. And I was like, now we're talking. This is cool.
Who did you go to those shows with?
One of my best friends, still to this day, his name's Chris Fallsgraf. He turned me on to so much music, like all the punk rock stuff. And then later I kind of dragged him into rock, and he was always like one step ahead of like the cool music. And still to this day, he sends me albums in the mail. A couple times a week, I'll get a package and it'll be like a cool album that we, you know, like REM, Murmur, Rufus Wainwright, or like anything eclectic that he like turned me on to music my whole life. He owned a record store at one point during our life.
Wow.
He got me to buy the first Faster Pussycat record and Appetite for Destruction. I still have the original with the real cover.
Yeah.
And he sold me those. And he was like ahead of the curve. Pearl Jam 10. He was always ahead. So him and I went to so many shows together. And there was that town, Cedar Falls. They had a big thing called the Unidome. And that's where I saw Motley Crue there. I saw with Autograph opening.
What Motley Crue tour was it?
Theater of Pain.
Yeah.
But I mean, I saw Motley Crue so many times. Like I was looking through my hundreds and hundreds of ticket stubs the other day when I was moving here, well, like last month. And I had this giant bag of ticket stubs. And I was like, I've seen Motley Crue on every tour. I don't know why. Like they weren't my favorite band by any means, but they must have toured, you know, a couple times through those small markets.
Crucially, though, did you see him on the John Corabi tour?
I did. I lived in Kansas City and saw them. Yeah.
How was that?
I thought it was great. I mean, that's one of my favorite Crue albums anyway. So I'm pretty sure anybody who knows anything knows that that's one of their better records.
Oh, it's insanely good. I can put that on now and I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. I had like friends who were always into Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue, and I liked it, and Motley Crue were cool, but I never like dived in full on. But when I heard that John Corabi album, I was like, this is just amazing.
Yeah.
It just kind of captured everything.
Yep.
For that time, I thought it was so good.
Yeah. I remember going to that show and the crowd was light, you know, the crowd wasn't like it was for all the other tours. And I remember one of my friends that worked at the venue was like, yeah, they scaled down from like, I can't remember, within 15 semis to like 8 semis in the last few days or something like that. Like it was going downhill at that point. I think they realized that whatever was going to happen.
That must have been the weirdest thing, because they must have come out on that album so excited and so revigored and like ready to just destroy.
Everybody's going to love this. People just couldn't accept it. Man, who would change singers in a band? Nobody would do such a thing.
At what point did you feel like you were getting really good on the guitar? Was it like a change from when you was playing those Kiss riffs and then you was getting a hang of the solos and all the Van Halen and Warren D. Martini stuff? Did it suddenly start to click into place?
Well, it never really did when I lived in Iowa, because there was no internet then, as we know. So, you know, I was reading Guitar Player magazine and Guitar for the Practice. I was Guitar World. I remember reading articles on like, and they'd have the tablature for Michael Schenker or Yngwie and stuff like, and you're just like, you don't really know what it sounded like. You're just reading it out of the magazine. So you have no idea like how fast or the rhythm of it. You're just like reading the notes. So when I was 18 and I graduated and I moved to LA, I remember The first night I landed in LA from the cornfields of Iowa, got in a super shuttle from LAX, went to my shitty little studio apartment with my buddy from high school, and he was like, come on, we're going to the Troubadour. And we're walking out of the apartment building to go to the Troubadour to see this guy. He's like, there's this band called Masi, Alex Masi, Masi. He's an Italian Yngwie guy. But we're walking, we got our long hair and we're dressed in our tight jeans and our Adidas oversized basketball shoes. And we're going to the Troubadour and we're walking out of our apartment building. And I can hear what sounds like Yngwie Malmsteen coming out of I'm like, does Yngwie, who is playing guitar like this? Right here in our tiny little apartment building on Yucca. And he's like, dude, everybody plays like that. I'm like, what? I'd only heard that on records. I was amazed that I'm surrounded by people that can play this way. And we go to the Troubadour and here's this Alex Masi. And I'm blown. I'm like sitting there in the front row of the Troubadour with my jaw on the floor, just going, I have never seen such a thing. Like I thought I'd heard good guitar players in Iowa, like my local heroes that would play the dance or something at our high school, who I'm still buddies with today. Kevin, he bought my Les Paul not that long ago, but those guys were playing the pentatonic leads, and I was just like, whoa, blown away. But when I got to Hollywood, it like my eyes were open and my jaw was on the floor. I went to GIT and I started playing like that's all you had to do. You're 18 years old, and GIT was a block away from our apartment. I was at that building at MI for 10, 12 hours a day, every day, just trying to soak in. And Paul Gilbert lived next door. I'd be walking to school and there's Paul Gilbert and Billy Sheehan, just like, whoa, walk into a room.
What year was this?
87. September of 87. So it's like Racer X was going. I was at both shows for the live Racer X record at the country club. But then, you see those guys up there doing that. And then you go to school and you walk by a little room. There's a little window and you look in and it's just Paul Gilbert sitting there with his pink Ibanez Destroyer with the white fringe on it, just sitting there playing through a little PV amp. And you just like knock and he goes, hey man, come on in. And you go in and it's like, here, you play this guitar and I'll play drum machine. And he starts playing Strutter and you're just like, what planet am I on? I'm just jamming Strutter on Paul Gilbert's Destroyer while he plays drum machine.
Superb. So what kind of level did you consider yourself to be at guitar playing wise before you got to GIT? Do you have to be accepted into their program?
They said you had to audition. I sent a tape, but I think they would accept anybody that had $5,000 at the time. And I went there. I remember they were like, okay, you have to go in this room and audition for this guy. Not audition. They were like, they wanted to check your level, which class to put you in. And I go in this room. It's this old guy, just like Albert Einstein looking guy, okay, show me what how you can play guitar. And I'm just like, God, who's this? I get the janitor or what? And I just I'm like, I think I'm a hot shot. I got this Dean Baby Z guitar. I'm like, check this out. Like burn my fastest licks. Guy's like, okay, here's your thing. And I leave and I go back and my neighbor goes, hey, who'd you get for your audition thing? And I was like, this weird old guy. He said he didn't even play guitar or whatever. And he's like, his name, I remember still, his name was Carl Schroeder. He was like this genius piano player that had played at the White House. And he was like the best music, and I had no idea who this legendary guy I'm sitting in a room with, which happened basically on a daily thing at GIT. You're like, who's this guy? Oh, Scott Henderson. Oh, Frank Gambale. Stu Ham's there. It's like, oh, geez. Every guy was better than the next.
That was probably good, though. If you'd have known it was somebody of that kind of level, you might have gone to pieces and oh, shit, there's some real pressure here.
I was terrible, though. When I was 18, and I just had this thing that I did that made me stick out probably as an 18-year-old in Iowa, which was just to move my arm as fast as I could. And somehow my fingers matched up a little bit. I had no idea even what a scale was at that time. And I was playing in a band in high school with these older guys and just shredding over. Here's one by Bachman Turner Overdrive called Taking Care of Business. And I'm going, just shredding the fastest stuff ever. So stupid.
Had any of your bands prior to you moving to California, had any of them kind of got any traction, or was it just friends in garage bands or anything like that? Or was it after you'd been to California that you decided to get serious?
I'm still waiting for one of my bands to catch any traction. When's that going to happen? After this podcast, I have a good feeling something's going to happen. I played just in cover bands. Like, I don't even think I ever recorded an original song before I moved to California. I was playing bars every weekend. I had this band with these older guys. It was called Alchemy. And it's just we played the typical bar band music, of the time, which I guess would be AC/DC. I think we did a whole lot of Rosie, and the singer, his name was Cheese. Still friends with him today. He was a great harmonica player. He still comes to gigs. If I do acoustic gigs in Iowa, he'll come out and bring his harps. Pretty cool. Still friends with all those guys, really, on Facebook.
Yeah.
There was this huge band from Iowa. They were called the Litterer Band. That was their last name. And they would pack. Back then, there was these things that there was like a ballroom. It would hold like 2,000 people. They had a semi. They had an RV. And it was a family band. And one of the roadies was a friend of ours from this super small town where all these guys were from. And he was like, I can get you on these ballroom shows with the Litterer Band. And all of a sudden, I think I was 16 or 17 at the time. My mom and dad would write me a note to get out of school, and we would go drive to this town. They had the smallest towns, and all of a sudden there's this ballroom, where they used to have dances in the 50s. And now all of a sudden, everybody from every small town would come, and 2,000 kids would be jammed into these ballrooms. I was 16 and 17 playing cover songs in front of those. So I thought I was hot shit then. Until I got to California, and I was like, whoa, that was ridiculous.
What were your expectations moving out to, not necessarily just of GIT, but of Hollywood itself? Did you have any expectations of what it was going to be like?
Yeah, I thought I was going to go there and take my long hair and go to GIT and be a big shot, go to Guitarist and get in a band and be on MTV in the first year. I was like, I'm leaving Iowa behind. I'm going to go to the big city and be a star.
What was the reaction in Iowa from your friends when you said, yeah, Tory's moving to Hollywood?
I don't know if it was a big deal to anyone but me, really. I don't remember anyone, like everyone just like, yeah, go get him, man. So weird, because to think of 1987 when there was no communicate, you'd have to call someone on the phone to get their reaction. It wouldn't be like the instant reaction you get today.
Who did you bump into when you was in Hollywood? Was it literally seeing people in the rainbow? I mean, that still happens now, but was there anybody then when you were like being super wide-eyed? Oh, let's go to the rainbow. And was it like, holy shit, look who's sitting over there?
Like when you'd go to the rainbow in 1987, you would see like every person you ever dreamed of seeing would be at the rainbow, and Guitarist still being there. I remember they had this thing called the No Bozo Jam at Guitarist. And my neighbor had this crazy idea. It was like, at that time, the No Bozo Jam, it was like Bang Tango. And there was a band called Taz that was big in Hollywood then. All these guys that, the bigger bands in Hollywood at the time, Warrant and bands like that, would do this No Bozo Jam. And you had to sign up, but you had to kind of be in a band or whatever. And my neighbor called up on the phone, I was in line, and said, yeah, me and my guitar player, he made up a fake band name, said we were from Detroit. He was from Jackson, Michigan. And he said, yeah, we're in town with this. We're in a big band from Detroit. We'd like to come do the No Bozo Jam. And they fell for it. And we go there and we get this backstage pass, and we're in the dressing room at Guitarist. And we're just like, we're 18 idiot kids from the sticks. And, the guys from Bang Tango are there. And we're just like, whoa, this is so cool. And we never got up and jammed. People were like coming around and making their little bands, and nobody talked to us. So that was funny.
You were just riding it out backstage.
Yeah, we're just like, yep.
VIP.
We're supposed to be here. We're cool. Not one person even says, hey, what do you guys want to play? We probably look like the biggest idiots ever. Everybody's in like leather pants and look cool. And we're like jeans and a t-shirt, probably from Venice Beach. So silly.
Super. So did you form any bands when you were out in California that first time?
I tried out for like 5 bands. God, what was this? Like, I can't remember what the thing was called. It was like a penny saver or something. And, there'd be little ads like looking for a guitar player, no drugs or egos or whatever, like the person's got to admit they do drugs or have an ego. Nobody would do that. But at the time, like starting, this would have been 88 on the Strip. Any of the bands that I would have been in, like Faster Pussycat was one of my favorite bands at that time. The first record I've listened to all the time. Although I'm going to school learning to shred like Paul Gilbert, I'm listening to Appetite for Destruction and going to the Cat House and seeing Faster Pussycat. There was this huge thing, this like backlash against GIT because bands like Faster Pussycat didn't shred. They just looked cool and played pentatonic riffs, like cool guitar parts. Nobody wanted to shred in that scene. So the big thing was looking for lead guitar player, no GIT. Like every ad would say no GIT. I'm sure Alex Kane could vouch for that. I think I saw Life, Sex, and Death at the Cat House. I told him this story a million times. Oh God, the band that opened for him had Mark McGrath from Sugar Ray, and he was like carrying he had a hockey stick for some reason. I have no idea why, but.
Was that the band that became Sugar Ray? Because was it something like the Rinky Dinks or Slinky Dinks or something?
Rinky Dinks. That's it. Yeah. But that name apparently was some game company owned it or something. Yeah. So I remember that. And then Life, Sex, and Death gets up there and I was just blown away. You know, Alex has some kind of contraption where he can run back and slam into his amps and they don't tip over. He's over there going crazy. Stanley's doing his thing. But at some point, Stanley just ran out the fire exit at the Cat House and never came back. I remembered so like it was yesterday. Alex just like, they stopped the song and they're like, Stanley, if anybody's seen Stanley, he just, I don't know. He's gone. So can anybody get up here and sing? And Robert Mason was there. And I remember like, he gets up there and I'm like, how does this guy know this song? And Robert Mason got up and sang a song and they were like, thank you, good night. Stanley never came back. And Robert Mason, I think he sang Tank. And I was just like, wow, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
So good. I've got to ask, because it's somewhere which I was always a fan of from an outsider, like the whole Cat House thing. Was that somewhere you went quite a bit?
Yeah. Yep.
How was that whole experience?
It was crazy. Like I found my Cat House. I had like a membership card. I was going to text a picture of that to Tammy, but yeah, I found my membership card. But that was kind of away from the strip. So we went there if there was a cool show like Life, Sex, and Death, you know, but the majority of the time we'd go to Guitarist or the Troubadour, stuff like that, down that way, down on the strip.
I hear Ricky Rackman's podcast talking about all the old stories and stuff and just how people are interconnected back then.
Yeah.
It's unreal. Like, I mean, obviously like someone like Shannon Hoon, he sang with Guns N' Roses and obviously became a big star in Blind Melon, but he talks about how he was just this kid who came and hung out with them all and all that kind of stuff. And John Five and all those kind of people, they used to smuggle them in because they were so young. All these massive stars. It's unreal to think what it must have been like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy stuff. So this was all like late 80s. What happened between that period and when you got the band Motherload together? Was Motherload your first band that started getting some traction? And
well, the band, this is so funny because now I'm working on a deal for the Tornado Alley. I had a band called Tornado Alley between GIT and Motherload. I'm working on a deal for the Tornado Alley record and I'm working on a deal for the Motherload record. I'm like, can I get a deal for the bands I play in now? Getting record deals for albums that I played in 30 years ago. But I did, me and the drummer that lived together in the studio apartment, his name's Eric Stoskoff. He played with a guy named Joshua Pariah. I think they had a band called Empire. And we were both from the same small town in Iowa. We came back from Hollywood at the same time. We were like, man, Hollywood's just, there's too much, you know? I don't know. We need to go back to Iowa. I remember there was like a business teacher at GIT and he was like, man, you guys could make so much more noise in a smaller place like than LA. It's like, everyone's doing it here. It's like, go back to Iowa, start a band, start touring. So that's what we did. We went back and we started this band called Tornado Alley.
That's some good advice from him though. That's some really good advice.
Yep. So we did that. And then at some point we got a little bit of traction around there in the local scene. And there was another band that had an agent. They were called Redline. They had an agency out of Minneapolis and they were touring all the time. It was like what we dreamed of doing coming back from GIT. You know, we were like, man, we just want to tour, get in a van and go tour all the time. And for some reason they were switching some members and they came to me, the bass player, Dave Cross, he came to me and he said, come on, after the gig, we're going to go for a ride in my van. I was like, cool. Dude's got a van. He's like, they go tour all the time. And he took me on this crazy van ride and it was just like, I think we should merge our bands and then you guys will be on, you know, we'll take your name and we'll just start touring with our agency. That's what we did. We toured for a good 4 or 5 years all over the United States.
Sweet.
Yeah. And then that band recorded an album called Gypsy's Kiss. which I think will be out soon on a label.
How was your networking and stuff back then? Obviously pre-internet and pretty much anything else. How was it? Was you just messaging like fanzines, and did you just build up a wealth of contacts in each town?
Yeah.
Each place?
Yeah. And remember, I don't know if you guys had we would put this thing at the merch booth, and just like you put your phone number and your address for a mailing list. You get on our mailing list. That was the big thing. It sounds so stupid now. Get on our mailing list. We'll mail you a postcard with all of our dates.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. Just have to do this like bulk mail thing where you mail out your tour dates once a month or whatever.
Cost you a small fortune. Now it doesn't cost a thing just to send all the emails and posts. It's crazy.
Yeah. We would throw in our originals with the cover songs. You had to play for like 4 hours a night. Some places 5 hours. So you do like 4 or 5 sets a night. But it was cool because we got to go to big cities and like Kansas City and Denver. There's so many cool clubs back then. And the bands that would, the nationals would come through those, and then they would use you as the opener.
Who did you get to open for?
Oh my God. I mean, so many bands. I'm thinking, like Night Ranger and Cinderella. God, Nitro. We opened for Nitro in Denver. We opened for Trouble. I had so many bands that I couldn't even think of, and bands that didn't become anything that thought they were going to be huge. Like there was a band called McQueen Street.
Never heard of them, no.
Yeah, they were on Warner Brothers. I think Ted Templeman produced their record. They were supposed to be the next Van Halen. Opened for those guys.
What happened from there to Motherload?
Yeah, and then so from that band, there was the coolest club in the world. It was called the Lone Star in Kansas City, and we played there like once a month. We opened for Dio there.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and it was just like the place probably held 500 people. It was just this amazing. It was when the rock scene was just the coolest, And any band that would come through Kansas City, I think Van Halen came there one time after they played, definitely Motley Crue, and anybody. If you were playing there and there was a huge show in town, you just knew, like you could just sleep through the first set because there wouldn't be anybody there. And then you would just know that as soon as the concert got over with, the bands and all the fans were coming right to that club in Kansas City. So after Tornado Alley, I was just like, I moved to Kansas City because I was like, man, they had the coolest rock scene there. And that led me to go to Kansas City and start Motherload.
You've recently revisited the Motherload stuff, and have you re-recorded it or remastered it and added things? What's the story behind the new repaint?
As time went on with that band, it's when I get air quotes you can't see, but hair metal had kind of lost favor at that point. I think it was around 93, 94. And we started wearing flannels and Doc Martens, and flannels wrapped around your waist and drop tuning to low D a lot, and some of my favorite bands around that time, Saigon Kick, Alice in Chains and stuff like that, just really killed the other genre. But the singer in that band, Greg is his name, he still sang, like Ray Gillen, which amazing. And I love Badlands, and his favorite singer was Bruce Dickinson. So he had a lot of vibrato and stuff. And the songs I were writing were more of the Alice in Chains, Saigon Kick style. And we really tried. We got a little record deal there. We were in the studio. I just remember everybody going, could you try that vocal one more time? Maybe. And we're just like, trying to step around. Maybe not so much vibrato on that. We just like hold the note out instead of going, ah! And it came out cool, and it got a little traction. But I just always, as I started writing and started singing more and more, I always wanted to go back. And because I wrote those most of the songs on that record, I was like, man, I'd really love to go back and kind of put the stamp on there that I wanted at the time. And through the wonders of modern technology, I got to do that.
Are you happy with how it's turned out? It's like, holy shit, this is what I had in mind.
Yes, as I was doing it, and some of it was really high for my vocal range, but I just found a way to sing a lot of those parts. And I added some harmonies that I always thought should have been there just to make it, more of what I kind of had. The Saigon Kick, I had harmonies on every line almost, which I thought was awesome. So I did that. And super happy with it.
And did that band evolve into the Black Mollies, or did Motherload end and Black Mollies was a whole fresh band, or is there any kind of connection between the two bands other than yourself?
There was one city in the U.S. where Motherload was popular, and that was Salt Lake City, Utah. For some reason, and we sold like 5,000 copies of that CD in that one town.
Holy shit, nice one.
Yeah, there was a radio station there called K-Rock. Gary Michaels and Mark and all the guys from that station Gary was he was the program director, and our label had sent out a bunch of those records, and I think they paid to get some promotion. And for some reason, it's so weird to think about, like the non-internet days of that time. I was like handwriting letters to program directors, and my friend was an over-the-road truck driver, and he calls me from a payphone. He's like, "Bro, I just heard your song on K-Rock in Salt Lake City." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "That's crazy." So oddly enough, I'm going to the NAMM show, like right around that time. I'm flying back to Kansas City, and my flight gets changed to go through Salt Lake City for some reason. So I'm like, I have a 3-hour layover in Salt Lake City. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call this radio station on a payphone. I find the number and call on a payphone. I'm like, this is going to seem super weird, but my name's Tory. I play guitar for a band called Motherload. The guy was like, "Get out of here." It's like, "Get out of here." I was like, "No, I'm serious. I just wanted to call and say thank you for playing our record." He's like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Dude, totally serious. I'm in the Salt Lake City airport right now." And he's like, "Well, I'm going to send a car over and get." I'm like, "No, I can't. I'm flying back home." And that started a friendship with Gary Michaels that I have to this day every time we play Salt Lake City.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Super cool, man. Super cool. So how did the Black Mollies band come to be?
Yeah, so Motherload was wrapping up. After we did that record, at some point, me and the singer had a falling out, I think over the vocal issue of that. And it was just, I ended up moving to LA, and then I just kept it going out there with new guys. And we were going to Salt Lake City every now and then and playing. And I was writing songs for a new Motherload record. They're actually the 4 songs that I wrote for that are on the new Repaint CD. I felt like that was kind of the bridge to the Black Mollies, where it was a 4-song EP called Bored, a completely almost different style. And at that time, I was getting more into melodic stuff like Jellyfish and King's X and stuff. And for some reason, I'm trying to think of when the complete change took place. The bass player, he wanted to get out of LA, and I wanted to go back to Kansas City because I was sick of LA again for the 3rd or 4th time. I kept moving back to LA and going, "It'll be different this time. It'll be different." And every time, the minute the door closed behind me, I was like, I hate it here. LA sucks. And so I went back to Kansas City, and that's how the Black Mollies started there.
When I heard it, it perfectly captured the 90s sound of Lit, Everclear, Marvelous 3, all that kind of stuff. So was you getting into more of that stuff, or was that stuff big at the time? Was you writing into that kind of style of music?
You named every influence that I had in the Black Mollies. I was going to see a band called Floyd's Funk Revival, which was turned into the Marvelous 3. It was Butch and Slug and Jace, and they were huge in Kansas City. So I think the first time I saw those guys, I was just like, man, this is exactly what I want to be doing.
It wasn't like first time you saw them, you wasn't, "Those are the guys from South Gang."
Actually, I probably did. Yep. I think there's a guy from my hometown that like knew the South Gang guys. I think he like lived with them or something, or this is the story. I think I talked to Butch about this one time, and he actually said, "That's the guy that came up with the name South Gang." So I can't remember who that guy is. He's a guy from my tiny little town in Iowa that either lived with them or like lived near them and said, you guys should call the band South Gang. But yeah, in Tornado Alley, we were playing in Cincinnati at a place called Never on Sunday, and club is completely dead. And there's this table full of long-haired guys sitting in front of us, just like rocking out. And we're like, who the hell are these guys? And somebody comes like, "The guys from South Gang are here. They want to get up and play a song." And they come backstage and just like, "Yeah, we'll do whatever, man." They were like, "We don't really hang out with the singer that much, but the 3 of us can play anything. What do you guys want to do?" And so we ended up playing, I think maybe like a set or at least several songs with those guys.
That's amazing. So what was it like seeing the Floyd band? Was you like, "Oh, this is the kind of stuff I want to get into"?
For sure. They were amazing. Every show, like after the first couple, I think I saw them like the first time where they were there and there weren't that many people. And then I said to a few people and like, "Oh man, you got to see this band." And then everybody that was at that first show of like 12 people. And the next time, and then every time after that, it was completely packed and just sweaty and high energy and really awesome. And Lit, of course, I loved Lit from the very beginning, and just all that cool stuff like that.
So you nearly ruined my birthday weekend a few years ago by going into emergency heart surgery.
Oh.
Are you cool to share the events leading up to that? Because I know you came out the other side with like the most positive and infectious outlook on life, which has become very inspiring. It's obviously been a huge change for you. Are you cool to share a little bit on what led to that and how you are today?
Yeah, of course. It's funny, when I was in the hospital after that happened, I was kind of laying there going, God, I don't know if I want to say anything about this or not. And then I went, man, I have to share as much as I can share to help. I just wanted to help people realize what the warning signs were, because up to that point, the day before that, my surgery, I had no idea. Like, I knew something was wrong, but you guys don't know about the messed up healthcare that we have here, which is, if you're poor, you don't get to go see a doctor if something's wrong. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg. So being a musician, being on the road, I never had insurance. And so I think it was a good 5 or 6 years leading up to that. I had the worst diet, terrible fast food diet, terrible, just fat, overweight idiot.
Just the on the road diet in a way, kind of thing.
For sure. Big Macs every day, Baconators from Wendy's, drinking 64-ounce sodas all day long, and just terrible. But yeah, I knew I was working out a ton because I was like, God, I am so fat and just out of shape. I thought I had to work out more and more, but the more I worked out, the more short of breath I became. And I remember this is all the way up now. We're to the new Black 7 because we had the bus. We bought the bus and the new Black 7. I remember we were opening for Rick Springfield in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I was taking a nap I was always tired, by the way, when I was, that fat and out of shape. Turns out the reason, I was out of shape and tired all the time was I had no blood pumping through my body because my heart was 90% blocked. So I would take a lot of naps and sleep a lot and be tired all the time. But I was on the bus. I remember rolling over in my bunk, and I couldn't even roll over in bed without my heart just beating like a rabbit. It would just, any amount of activity would make my chest feel like an alien was trying to break out of there. I don't know why that wouldn't be a warning sign that you have something weird going on with your heart, but it just never clicked with me until that day. We actually opened for Tesla. The new Black 7 opened for Tesla the night before this. I remember I was on stage getting ready to go on, and my friend said, dude, it's packed auditorium, McElroy Auditorium, where some of the Aerosmith live record was recorded. It's like a huge, awesome venue in my hometown. My friend is in the front row, and there's thousands of people out there waiting to see Tesla, and we get to go on before them. My friend's like, dude, here's a beer. And I'm like, and at that time, I knew something. I felt like something was about ready to, break. So I'd stopped drinking, and I was just working out a lot. And I was like, no, man, something's wrong. I'm not going to drink anymore. And we played that show. And then the next night I went to the studio. I was walking down the stairs and my heart just started pounding like super hard. And I was like, I couldn't take a deep breath. I went home, sat down on the couch, and I just I was coughing and I couldn't take a deep breath. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just go to bed. I laid down in bed and I started coughing. I was on my back. And I was like, I felt something I was going to get a little gross here, but I felt something go into my hand as I coughed, really like a coughing fit. And I felt something go into my hand, and I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and I shined it on my hand, and it was blood. So I was like, well, I can't ignore that. I'm going to get up and go to the hospital. I got up and drove myself to the hospital. That was a Friday night / Saturday morning at 2 or 3 a.m. Looking like I do, I walk into the hospital with my heart beating out of my chest and saying, I can't get my heart under control. I know what this is going to seem like. Somebody's been out partying, doing coke. But I said, I guarantee you, I've never done cocaine in my life, ever. And they're just looking at me out of the side of their eye like, oh, sure you haven't. But I spent the next 4 hours at that emergency room hospital. And when they took my blood pressure and my heart rate, they were like, your blood pressure and your heart rate are off the map. Like, we have to get your blood pressure down or you're going to have a stroke right now. I was just like, oh man. They're like, well, you probably just, you have high blood pressure, this and that. And then all of a sudden they came in, they're like, you need to go to this other hospital. And I was like, oh, why is that? And they were just like, they'll tell you there. I'm like, okay, I'll just drive over there. I have my car there. I drove myself to the hospital. And they were like, no, you're not, there's an ambulance waiting for it. I was like, what? I can just drive. And they're like, no, you can't. And they throw me in this ambulance and take me to the other place where they put me in a room. And the nurse is telling me, they're probably just going to give you some medication and they'll send you home. And I was like, okay, everything's under control. And all of a sudden the door busts open and it's like 4 people with this machine and they're like putting something. They're like, okay, you need to get out of here. Blah. They get her out of there. The surgeon's on his way. You've had a heart attack and we need to go into surgery right now. And I hadn't told anybody I was even there. They were like, you need to call your parents and we'll wait for them to get here. And at some point they were like, one kind of funny story, but before they got there, the nurse, after everything calmed down, they shaved my nuts to put these in case they had to go in through down there. And they shaved my wrist. They put this nice little bracelet on there. And this nurse comes in and she takes my hand and I look at her. I'm just like, what are you doing? She's like, it's going to be okay. And she had like a tears in her eye. And I was like, go, geez, don't start crying. I start bawling. I'm like, what am I going to die here or what? I was like, oh, thanks a lot for that. And then they came in and they were like, we can't wait for your mom and dad. We have to go. You have to go to surgery right now. And then they wheeled me out the hallway and my mom and dad were walking down the hall. And I woke up halfway through that in the operating room. I remember just like these bright lights and all these people. Yeah, and I guess so. They went in through my wrist and they couldn't get any stents in my heart through my wrist. So they went in through the bottom and he got 3 stents in there. They opened up 3 of the arteries and I still have one that's 100% clogged. So halfway through when they went out and told my mom and dad that they didn't think I was going to make it and that they're probably going to put me on a helicopter to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. But somehow he got through there and then I woke up and he was like, you're super lucky to be alive and you should really use that. And boy, I walked out of the hospital a different guy than walked in.
Yeah, unreal, man.
Yeah.
Unreal. So what was your next steps from that? Was you like trying to find information about what you could do, or did you just feel totally different and just grateful for everything?
Seriously, when I walked out of the hospital, I looked up at the sky and I was like, the sky is so blue. Everything was different. It was seriously just like a 180 of everything in my life and the way I felt and what was important, everything about it. And I mean, the hospital is so good about doing rehab and telling me what to do and what not to do. But the minute, seriously, when I woke up from that operation, I felt completely different in my chest. Whereas before that, it felt like there was an elephant trying to get out of there. And I was just, the doctor's or the nurse said when I woke up, she's like, how do you feel? And I was like, I want to get up and go running. Or I feel great. I couldn't believe how different I felt.
Yeah, it had all just been building up over time. And you say you kind of knew there was something wrong, but it had been kind of like a casual build.
Yeah, for sure. That had to be going on for years and years. So I just got used to the way I felt. I felt shitty all the time. Remember when we came to England with Enuff Z'Nuff to play Download? What year was that?
That was 2010, I believe.
2010. Something was wrong way back then because, yeah, we got off the plane and we flew into London and then we drove to Liverpool. And on the way, Chip looks at me. He's like, bro, you don't look so good. And I was just like, I don't feel good. We need to pull over to a service. And we pulled over. I wish I knew which service this was because it was super bizarre. I felt like I was going to die. I was short of breath. And they had told me when I got to the hospital, they're like, you've probably been having a small heart attacks for quite a while because your heart was it was 90%. I only had 10% heart function.
Shit.
Probably been having small heart attacks for quite a while. And I think that probably was that because I got out of the van at a service. I don't remember who was driving us. I don't know if it's Craig at that point, but I remember getting out of the van at the service and I just laid down on the parking lot because I felt so terrible. I really thought I was going to die there. And then we got to Liverpool, which I was just like, oh, I can't wait to go to the Cavern Club in Liverpool. It's the place where we were going there to play a gig before Download. Yeah, everybody else went out in Liverpool and I got to stay at the Travelodge and just feel like shit for a good day and a half. And then it just went away and I was fine.
Yeah.
But I think that was definitely connected.
It's been amazing to see you since then and just see all the positivity, all the good vibes you do put out.
Man, I always say, I tried it the other way. And it was awful. I tried it the way of not being positive, and it's terrible.
So you touching on Enuff Z'Nuff there. So you've been a long-time member for the band now. So how is it being a mainstay member of a band you were a fan of from the audience for so long? Had you guys crossed paths much over the years prior to you joining? I know you probably played a couple of gigs a few years prior to you getting the gig, but was there anything leading up maybe 10 years prior to it? Had you ever met Chip and Donnie or anybody else?
I met Chip at a gig in Kansas City because in Motherlode, we had this guy named Bruce Corson from Chicago. We were talking about him managing us, and he owned a place in Lamont, Illinois called Sidetracked, which was Enuff Z'Nuff's home club. That was the place where they were the house band, and there was a studio there. I think Chip and Donnie recorded a live record there. And he brought us in and we played a gig there. And his big thing, I'm bros with Chip Z'Nuff, but longer story short, Chip was playing, or Enuff Z'Nuff were playing at this place called the Filling Station in Kansas City. And Bruce said, hey, my guys are playing at this place in Kansas City. You should go see them. And I go knock on the bus door, and Chip opens the door just a little bit, and he goes, can I help you? And I go, yeah, I'm a friend of Bruce Corsone's. And he like throws the door and goes, any friend of Bruce Corsone's a friend of Chip Z'Nuff. Get on up here. And he invites us on the bus. And that was the first time I met Chip. And they had just like switched buses. So Ricky, parent, was sitting on the floor, like taking their VHS tapes out of the, he's like replacing the VHS tapes from the other bus. We just sat there, and Chip had he had a local drug dealer with like a bunch of pot on the table in the front lounge, and they're like going through all this pot, and I'm just sitting there laughing going, man, I love this band so much. I was sitting here with Chip Z'Nuff, and that was the first time I met him. And then I would go see them on and off in Kansas City a bunch. And but Randy Scott, so when Randy got in the Black Mollies, that was around 2007, the year that they played Rocklahoma with CJ when Donnie came back. And I went to Rocklahoma just as a spectator and to see Randy, some friends from down there. And we were wandering around backstage, and Randy was saying, man, I think CJ is going to Japan, and we're gonna need like a guy to fill in for him for a little while. And I'm like, he's like, would you be interested in doing that? I said, dude. And he goes, come on, let's go talk to Chip. And we go on this bus, and Randy's like, so CJ's going to be gone for a while. He's like, I got your guy right here. And he's like, can you play, bro? He's like, you got threads? Can't be looking like a mechanic playing it Enuff Z'Nuff.
Oh my God, I love that.
So my first gig with those guys, fairly soon after that, I went to Chicago to rehearse one time with just Chip and Randy. Donnie was living in Vegas, and I went there, and I learned the songs the first time I went to rehearse with Chip. It was just the one rehearsal, and I was like, man, I'm going to learn these songs so freaking good that they never want CJ back. I'm like, I want this freaking gig. And I went there, and we played that was when Dissonance came out. And so I think a couple of the songs on Dissonance and High, pretty good little shreddy things in there. And on the demo I had, it was Jakey Lee was shredding on the I don't think that ended up on the record anywhere, but on the one that came out. But I took some of Jake's little shreddy things and learned them really well. I think it's like we ended like the third song, and Chip with both of our guitars on just comes up and hugs me. It's like, bro, you're my guy. And we just like played 3 songs. He's like, you like coffee? And then he's like, all right, you're going to have to get some good threads. We're going to be traveling all over the world together. And I was like, who knew that we really would travel all over the world together?
I love it, mate. So I'm going to wrap things up. The second Black Mollies album you called Ignorance is Bliss, because you once said, once you stop worrying about the whole music industry and pushing things too much, that's when things began to happen for you.
Yeah, really.
Does that still apply, do you think?
Yeah, I don't care about the music industry at all. No, I think all you can do, and I'm probably too lax about it just because I'm a shy person and I'm terrible at networking. I'm terrible at talking to strangers. That gets me the label of being kind of a snooty asshole sometimes, which I don't think I am. I'm terrified of talking to strangers, which is not a good trait in the music industry when you're trying to push your music on people. So I just kind of resigned myself to just making music and having fun doing it. And it's, I think the days of the industry where stars are made are long gone, and not the best you can hope for. I mean, and it's so weird talking about this right now, that the way the industry is at the moment, because nobody's working. But up until this, touring and making a living was my dream my whole life. And up until this year, obviously with these circumstances, it was working out very well. And just playing in, the number of projects, the New Black Seven and Enuff Z'Nuff, just playing all the time and making a living at it. That was my dream, and that's what I was doing, and hopefully we'll do again some year soon. We had like the coolest tours this year too, with the Faster Pussycat thing, and we had a bus. Everything, the plans were really good, but at least we got to go to Australia, and Australia was amazing. If it had to be a last show of this terrible year.
You just got in there before everything went to shit. You just clipped it just at the right moment.
Yeah, and we actually got I think a bonus 4 days at the end of that in Australia after that last show. So it's a good way to end it. I think, and the guys that promoted that show have a record label, and I'm pretty sure they're going to put out the Motherlode record in Australia. So
there you go. It's the ignorance is bliss thing. Like all that stuff, like you say, from over 30 years ago or whatever, just all of a sudden things are coming together, and it's great, man.
All I have to do is live another 30 years and I'll get a new Black Sabbath deal.
Super.
Chip will be 100 and he'll still be going, bro, let's get in the Oscar Mayer Wiener wagon.
Yes. Mate, I'm going to let you go. Thank you for sharing the stories.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
See you soon, mate. Take it easy.
All right, buddy. See you.
I think that you like to hear yourself complaining. Why don't you like anything? I think that you like to hear yourself complaining. Why don't you like anything? You think I like it too?
Thanks so much to Tory for sharing such great stories, and it's so cool to hear that he's in a wonderful place right now and still putting out so much great positivity and fun. Be sure to check out all the Black Molly's songs on SoundCloud or hit up Tory online on Instagram, where you can find him at Tory_tunes. Thanks to all you guys out there for continuing to support the Straight to Video podcast. This really is turning into such a fun ride, and I'm glad you're all on board to share it. Please continue to post and comment about the podcast and help to make this thing grow into the monster I want it to be. Until we talk again, I've been your host, Rob Lane. Take care and lots of love to all of you.